Now, last year, we didn't have a stunt forum. This year we have it in a new, much larger, more elaborate building. We're going to have some excellent demonstrations, some speakers of world renown. Unfortunately, you're not going to see this at the stunt forum. This plane got put on the back burner for a lot of reasons. Number one, we were working on our little profile Cardinal, wanted to finish that up. We're also doing a lot of work around the house. And we're not really going to be able to bring any of our completed and flown planes. But we will be bringing our little Brodak Profile Cardinal. And we hope it's going to be a good day. Now, what I try to do before every stunt forum is run the tapes from the previous years, and we've got these going back quite a ways. I think to 90 we even have one. There's such good demos, such good information. They're always one of the most popular tapes. One of the tapes that even years later, the demos are excellent, the information's excellent, and of course if you really want a copy of any of these, they're available back to I think 90. Now this stunt forum is going to give us a little bit of a chance to get some feedback from people, how they like the appearance of the plane, the look of it. Needless to say, we're looking forward to seeing all our friends that we haven't seen in, my God, in so long. It's ridiculous. Winter always seems to take a long time, but stunt forum is always a good time to renew old friendships. Usually after it's over, we run over and have a pizza, have something. If it's a flyable day, we always get Banjock to fly his bi-slob or something. Always a lot of fun, though. Always a lot of fun. And we really look forward to, putting this guy out on show. It's been a labor of love. This is a tremendous labor of love to get this plane to this point in time and still get all the construction work done that we've been working on around the house. A tremendous labor of love. El Nino strikes again. Look at this rain. God, El Nino special. Anyway, it's nice. One of the nice things here is having a small plane. It fits in the car. Don't even have to take the seats out. Put them together. We want babies.
Whose are they?
Rudy's?
Yeah. It's Rudy, the king of Long Island. Holy mackerel.
Everything?
That came out great.
What time is the start anyway?
Yeah, this is great. The kid isn't even, the plans aren't even drawn and there's 6 of them built already. I don't know if that's ever been done before. You didn't fly yet, did you?
No.
Oh, you bum.
I haven't started the motor yet.
You bum. Get some pictures for Stunt News.
What the name? Brodak Cardinal. Is that painted?
Yeah.
What do you mean get? We've got
Pictures. You guys are photogs, man. Good.
Yeah. Oh, Wendy, I got something here to show you that. Here it is. That'll replace when your hair dryer burns out. Check this out.
Rudy, I gotta ask you, where'd you get these cheesy motor pads? Boy, those they didn't come from Grumman, did they?
Yes, they did.
Oh! We're gonna have to get you some real motor mount pads. Oh my
They
God.
already had the offset in them.
Wow.
Look, when your hair
They're
dryer
shims
burns
we
out,
use on
$10. 400 watts.
Really? Where'd you get that? Pro, CBS. Cool. Can you plug it in a cigarette lighter and like blow dry your hair on the way to a
It goes
concert?
with 400. It'll melt all
Yeah.
that epoxy down.
Yeah, yeah.
I already done it.
That's
It works
great.
fine.
Yeah,
It's a high and low setting,
yeah.
compact enough,
That's good.
and when you want to look stylish, plug it in the thing, go in the bathroom, and
I scratched Rich's video. I called Wendy, I got the numbers from him, and then, yeah, well, I already had a set of cardinal plans.
No methanol.
Matter of fact, I got a cardinal kit.
Here's another man. How many kits you got? You bring any kits with you?
And we went to
Ah.
one day. The only thing though, I lost the sun.
Let's see what you got. Well, you got pictures?
Yeah, got some
Oh,
pictures here. I had lost the sun though the day that I took them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that looks nice in pictures. Well, give me some pictures for stunt news, yeah.
All right, look through these and whatever you figure is good.
I'll send them all back to you when I send you some more tapes.
All right.
Let me borrow them before the day's over. I'll put them on and then I'll send them back.
Okay, I guess I got a few of them there.
So let's go flying. The hell with this. I'm ready to fly. I gotta tell you, this hibernation's for the birds. Working on houses and plumbing.
Well,
and stuff.
we've gotten a couple days in, but not with this.
Fruity, let Kenny take a picture of you holding both of them.
All right.
Get one in each hand. Get one good picture for the shop, anyway.
Somehow, I guess.
Which way, Ken? With the sun?
it's split.
The purple looks like Vic's old paint. He didn't steal Vic's old paint, did he? Look at this. I get a picture of Ken's ass. Ken, how about a clue?
Professional photographer.
This is going to be on the kit box, Rudy, so, Wheaties. Wheaties.
Need it.
All right, well. Oh, look at this boy. I tell you, he eats up all the publicity.
Have you ever thought of an RC Cardinal?
I already made one. George Ventrini made one, yeah. We call it the Weed Whacker. It's got an electric motor in
When
it.
was this?
Gee, it was in the summer.
Yeah?
It's got some kind of giant electric motor in it. We use it for whacking weeds.
Damn good to see it. Listen.
Now, he didn't fly it yet. He's got the guy that has the big tsunami.
I'll get you tonight.
Whose is heavier, Rudy? About the same? You weigh yours?
Close.
Yeah.
They're close.
There's no.
Mine's 42 exactly.
Mine's 42 exactly too.
I'll be a son of a gun.
Well, I guess it's in the design.
That's me. Gotta be in the design.
Dwayne will build one that'll be 53.
That's because I'll drop cheese pizza inside the wing.
No, I think 42 is pretty good for a 620-inch plane. With a 40. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Hey, Cheetos, get your fat feet out of the way.
Yeah, and Mike, thanks a lot for. Hey, Mike.
Just simple mistake. You don't want to, you know.
Thanks for all those great photos you've been sending me for Sunday. You really been covering the area.
No problem.
You really have been doing a great job.
Louis was doing it.
Nah, baloney. Louis said you were doing it.
He never told me. Never told me I was doing it.
Frank Schwager.
Yeah, I know who you are, Frank. I figured you were going to try to steal something. That's why I was keeping an eye on you.
Fire City.
Let's see if these guys are getting set up here. Whoa, look at all this stuff. Whoa.
Excuse me, I was talking to you about the Spitfire Coast.
Yeah.
Is that Royal Navy colors or is that real?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's
Part of the Ivy.
I know you're not making scale models. The bubble canopy one is fairly late.
Yeah.
And that's like on a World War II scar.
stuff, and after about 3 weeks of shaking down the shop and so forth, I'm actually in production now. Some of you may not even know about foam cores. In our hobby, things come into favor and things go out of favor. And foam wings came in, I guess, during the late 70s and early 80s. Polystyrene foam. This is what we get at Home Depot for insulating buildings and so forth with. Okay, they make this at the facility in billets that are 16 feet long, 50 inches by 40 inches, these huge blocks. I buy half billets sliced down. I either slice them or the company slices them into 6-inch sheets for me, and from 6-inch sheets of this stuff, I custom cut wings for you. With a hot wire and a bow and a set of patterns, I create a double or triple cord wing for a stunt plane. This is a little one. This is one of the trial horses. This is for a prowler. Okay, prowler's a double cord wing. They can be done in. This is a relatively heavy wing. It's a relatively thick wing. It's possible to cord them a little thinner. I'm playing with making the span of the plane a little bigger, a little narrower. The wonder of foam is that it probably takes anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to create this once all the patterns are made and you have all the equipment to do this. But once you have that equipment, it's possible to customize or custom turn out these wings. So there are two things I can offer the stunt community. One is the availability of this technology. There isn't anyone other than myself. I think Tom Dixon is trying to develop the capacity to create these things. The other thing that I can offer is the ability to either customize any of my 200 or 300 designs for wings, or work with you to create a set of patterns for a design that you have. The pendulum is slowly, or relatively slowly, has swung back in the other direction. People have moved somewhat away from these wings, and we're seeing more built-up wings again, which is a great idea. If you can build light and straight, if you're using some kind of a building jig, whether it's lost foam or one of the other jig methods, you can create a real straight, real light wing. When we look at my Nobler, we'll see a really terrific example of a very, very straight, very light wing. Well, what this allows is for anyone to produce a straight wing. And within an ounce and a half, something like that, depending upon how you sheet your wing, a light wing, and do it very quickly. Once you have cores in your house and the proper materials to finish this, you can finish essentially the end of a building session with your whole wing together, or at the very least ready to join. 2 days should give you a wing ready to install in the airplane. Anyway, you go from here, or at least I do, to this. A triple cord wing without spars or gear clips is $40. It's pretty cheap, and you take it home, and in a couple of days you're on with your project with a nice straight wing. But that's what I do. I'm going to be around for a long time doing this, and my intent is to serve the stunt community. So if you have some questions, I'll be happy to answer them, or otherwise you can see me at my table. Certainly.
Yeah, can you bring your own templates down to you and you'll deal with them?
Sure.
All right. Secondly, it's been my experience in sheeting wings that they come out better to sheet them before they're cored.
Okay.
Can we buy them from you uncored and sheet them and bring them back to you and have you core on that?
We can do it that way, or you can ship them to me. If you pay the shipping, I don't have a problem with that. I try to be careful. I go at this from the angle of being a real craftsman. I think that Rich asked me the same thing. No, I don't have a problem with it at all.
Just for me though, he doesn't.
If they're free, you know, one of the things you can get away with if you sheet them before you core them is you can core them out a millimeter or so more and get the thing infinitesimally lighter. No, I don't have any problems customizing the process. If you want to go through the trouble and work with me, I'll at least attempt to go through the trouble and work with you. You're going to have to smile though. Anyway, spars, whatever length, if you want double spars, gear clips, whatever it is that you need, we can do. The first wing, I'm shipping it out on Monday. I started off stepping off the deep end. One of Wendy's clients called me up and we did a sweeper wing. And if you've seen the sweeper, massive airplane, tricycle gear, the spar runs in the latter third of the wing, and the gear clips actually go backwards. They go back and connect up with the trailing edge. A real trick, and it came out pretty good. So I must be doing something right. Any other questions? Yes.
Sheet? Will you sell sheeted wing or no?
I will, but I'm not doing it now. For a couple of reasons. One is that really good wood for sheeting is hard to come by. And when it is available, it's expensive. And I don't have a large enough stock at this point that I can, you know, essentially go through and throw away half of an order of wood to have sheeting wood, and that's what it takes. The other thing is that doing that work, it's truly custom work. And it takes me essentially as long to do this job as it takes you. Not because I don't do it more often, but because for me it has to be perfect. I know when I was buying cores from Scotty, he would deliver me a set of cores, I would open it up and look at it, and if it wasn't perfect, I wasn't satisfied. An imperfect wing, something that you look at and you might see a little chatter mark or something, is perfectly usable. But I know that with a piece of foam, I'll put it this way, what I've discovered is that you buy this stuff, it's perfect, it's clean, everything I do with it after it leaves the doors of the factory where it's produced makes it a little less perfect. It makes it a little dirtier, a little this or a little that. You take a wing like this and you bang it against the edge of the table and it's ginched. You know, if you're sanding it and you hook it, well, all of a sudden you've got an unsaleable item. You know, that causes me to do a lot of things twice. And yes, I'm going to to answer your question, I'm going to get into doing those things a little bit later, a little bit further down the line. I want to get this perfect. I want to satisfy my back orders and so forth before I take on those kind of projects. The last thing that's a consideration there, my catalogs are out on the table, and you will find that my prices for this are probably about 40 or 50% higher than what Scotty was charging for it. And the reason for that is not greed, it's just that he was not charging for the time that goes into doing this. If I'm going to do this, I need to be able to do it on an economic basis, or I won't be in business doing this. The other thing is that I need to find a couple of people that I can work with who can take some of the pressure off of me so I can spend time doing some of these more time-consuming and craftsman-like things. And I have not found people who really want to do this. If I'm charging a realistic price, I can pay someone a realistic amount of money to do this. Sheeting wings and finishing wing cores and flaps and so forth is a loss leader. It's a service to the community, but it's one I want to offer. Any other questions?
Okay,
No
thanks.
questions? Thank you.
Wander up here without your muffler and tell us about your mufflers.
Without my mufflers.
Well, for all of you who don't know me, I'm Randy Holcroft, and I'm what they call retread. I did this in the early 70s, and I just got back on it a few years ago. And one of the first things I encountered through going to contests and watching was the fact that we need to keep our motors a little quieter than they would be without a muffler, because your areas won't tolerate it. They don't like it with a muffler either, but at least it's livable with a muffler. And the biggest drawback to a muffler is weight. And the second biggest drawback is it robs performance. And that's no good. If you are going to attach something to your airplane, you want it to enhance performance, not hold you back. And as we all know, through buying different engines from different manufacturers, they almost all come with mufflers. They're almost all unusable for our purposes. You have the option of using a tongue muffler, but a tongue muffler really isn't a performance gain. It's just a Band-Aid. If you have a particular airplane that is nose heavy, a tongue muffler can be very advantageous because there's almost no weight involved. But if you want to have a very nice sounding run, a very good power producing run, and a very even run, then you have to have something that's going to accentuate the way the engine runs. And you need to have an expansion type muffler. Anybody who's ever been involved in automobile or motorcycle racing understands the need for an exhaust system. If an engine ran best with no exhaust scavenging device, they'd run drag racers without headers on. They would. There'd be no exhaust on them at all. But that doesn't work that way. You need something to help the exhaust gas exit. You need a way to direct it. And we run single-cylinder engines, but on multiple-cylinder engines, the exhaust gas from one cylinder helps to draw the exhaust gas from the next cylinder out, making it run more efficiently. So the goal was to make a light muffler that was durable, that worked. And I tried and I failed. And I went to some people that I flew with, mostly the Philly Flyers, and said, what can I do to make this better? And it got better. And then I started going to contests with mufflers, and people started taking interest. And I discussed it with Wendy, mostly because of the Super Tiger 60, and the need for a good muffler for that. And the muffler that I now have, which I don't have in front of me, developed out of that. What we have is I have a muffler that weighs anywhere from 1.2 to 1.4 ounces, very light. It's appealing as far as I'm concerned to the eye because it's very smooth, it polishes nicely, and it doesn't detract from the looks of the airplane, at least in my own opinion. They're made from 6061 T6 aircraft quality aluminum, which may not mean anything to somebody who doesn't know anything about metal, but being a tool maker, I know that it's probably one of the better quality aluminums you can use. It doesn't stress, it doesn't crack, it's very durable, and it welds well. All my components, except for the muffler stack, are made from that because that's how I buy it. The muffler stack that I use is an extrusion that's commercially available, and it's why make it if somebody else already does? I'm not averse to buying somebody else's product. I currently make mufflers for all the popular stunt engines. I have mufflers in the works for the. Here's one that I custom made for Noel Drindak. This is not a muffler for a conventional stunt engine. This is a muffler for a rear exhaust PA stunt engine. I think it's PA 61, I believe. And Noel contacted me and said, I need a muffler for this, and this is how I want to do it. He sent me a little picture, a little drawing, and from that I made this, which apparently suits his needs well. He was very happy with it. This is very light. This is under an ounce. And mostly it's under an ounce because there's no welding involved. That's the only thing that I don't do to my mufflers. I don't do the welding because I don't have the facilities to do that. Everything else is manufactured by me or machined by me. And the welding I have done at a local it's an automotive parts store. And they happen to have the right welding equipment to do a nice job. And even though he's not accustomed to doing this type of work, the more I give him, the better he gets and the better my mufflers look. Now, as you can see by this muffler, I don't know if Noel wants you to pass it around or not. Sure. This was.
You'll make another one if they wreck it.
Yeah, I will too.
You're in my box when you're done.
The only part of that that's actual tubing is the body. Everything else was solid when I got it. I looked around at the prices charged for mufflers that are comparable, and I came upon a figure that would make me a little bit of money, but would satisfy the customer base that I was trying to target, which would be you guys. I know I don't like spending a lot of money for my stuff. That's why I go to swap meets. So if I'm going to buy something new, I want to get a good deal. Now the the biggest thing with mufflers is, especially the tube type, is you don't want them coming apart. And I've never actually had one come apart on me, but I've heard that they have. And in the early stages, mine came apart too, because I had to learn how to do it right. I mean, with any development, anything in development, you're going to have some bugs you got to work out. I've had my mufflers that are the final stages, the way I manufacture them now, survive asphalt crashes, survive dirt crashes, survive engine runaways and fly-offs. And if my muffler can withstand that, it can withstand almost anything. So it was a product that just wasn't out there. And although I'm not a manufacturer, that's not what I do for a living. I have a real job. This is something I do in my spare time, and I make them to order. I do stock them. As you can see, I didn't bring it with me. But I do stock them. It's kind of a last-minute deal. Actually, when Rich mentioned it about 2 weeks ago, I thought he was joking. But I can make just about any muffler to order in any configuration you need, provided you give me a detailed sketching, especially detailed as far as bolt spacing and how it needs to attach to the engine. Given enough lead time, you know, if it's custom, it's going to take a little longer because they need to make things up special. But in Noel's case, that was just a tardiness on my part. It was something that I got, and I just kept putting it aside. And finally, when I did make it, it turned out so nice. I was sorry I waited so long. But I understand that Noel's very happy with it. Some of my mufflers have been to the Nats and have done rather well. I'm not saying it's the be-all, end-all, cure-all of a muffler problem for your engines, but it is a good product and it does work. All the prototypes are on my own airplanes, and the prototypes are not made as well as the ones that I sell, because the prototypes aren't welded, they're soldered. And although that was adequate in the beginning, we found out through maybe 2 or 3 flying seasons, it wasn't adequate. So now all my mufflers are welded. And eventually I guess mine will fall apart and I have to use my own stuff. But that's about it. I mean, it's something that we all have to deal with. And if we have to have it, why not have something that's not going to take away from the performance of our airplane? And that's the first one I've made for a rear exhaust engine that was designed for a pipe. And we'll see how it works this year. Any questions?
What engines do you normally make?
Oh, I'm sorry. I make mufflers that fit any of the OSFP derivatives, 35, 40. The muffler also fits the OS LA series, the LA40, LA46, because all the bolt space is the same. All the Super Tiger Stone engines. I can accommodate people that have the older Super Tiger engines that don't have muffler mounting lugs on the side of the case. I make an adapter that fits. To do this, I'd probably have to get your engine, or you'd have to have somebody do some drilling and tapping on the center webbing of the exhaust port, because there is actually a little tapped hole there that's not quite big enough to really hold an adapter on that your muffler can screw to. Because what I would do is I'd make up a special muffler stack that's a little wider, because I need to have a little more bolt spacing. And I make an adapter that fits over the exhaust flange of the engine so it won't move. It's held on by a flathead screw that is held in place once you bolt your muffler on. It can't vibrate loose. Everything is a clamp fit on that. Yes, captive, so it can't vibrate loose.
Do you make them for Fox 35?
Believe it or not, a muffler for the OS Max 40 has the same bolt spacing as a Fox 35 with the ears on it. The only difference is the muffler has to be a lot shorter, because the length from the front bolt attaching point on a Fox 35 to the thrust point, the thrust washer on the Fox 35 is very short. So if it's going to be used for Fox 35, I need to know that in advance so I can hack off the front of it. It doesn't hurt performance. The muffler tubes themselves are 3 inches long. And there's plenty of volume in there, and they're all designed around a Tiger 60. So if it can handle the volume of exhaust in a Tiger 60, it can definitely handle the exhaust from 35. And I have never had an engine run worse with one of my mufflers on. Like I said, it's not going to take a bad engine to make it good, but it's not going to take a good engine to make it bad. So it won't detract at all. All it can do is make it acceptable, which is what we all have to do. If we want to keep our flying fields we have to make sure that the municipalities and the people surrounding them are happy. Because all it takes is one person to complain, and they're going to hear that one complaint over all of our objections.
I'll talk to you later.
I have a couple of vintage Fox 35s from late 50s, early 60s. They don't have the center web, they don't have the ears on the end of the
Sell it to
stack.
Hampshire.
Can you adapt somehow to hold them?
Well, if I'm correct, I believe a lot of the adapters used for those mufflers used almost like a worm gear clamp. A strap clamp, and it would be very easy for me to mill little flats on the side and tab it for that. The only thing is, if you're going to do that, that would be at your own risk, because if you tighten down and don't want them too tight, you can distort the case itself.
Yeah.
But you can do that. And what I would do in a case like that is I'd make sure that I recessed the mounting area a little bit, so you have a couple of little webs sticking up to capture it so it wouldn't twist on the exhaust face. Like I said, I can do anything. In fact, I have some of those motors. So I have one of almost everything that I make it for. I've made motors for the SF46, the OS Max SF46. It's got an oddball spacing. It's right between the 40 and between the Tiger 60. It's right in the middle. So you have to drill the holes different for that. I don't drill anything at assembly. I wait till I get an order, and then I put the holes in to match the engine that's going on.
Okay, so I could tell you approximately the year of the engine and things, and you could...
If you told me that it had no mounting lugs, then I'd make it so we wouldn't have to use it. Anything else?
Good, thanks, Ben. Why don't you wander up and tell us about your product line? This we're going to cover later.
Rich, just a straw poll. Is anybody too warm? You want to open that exit door and get some air?
Everybody's okay?
Okay.
I assume I don't need the microphone, everybody can hear me. I brought a couple of sets of laser cut ribs. I think this is the thrust of what I've done in the last year or two, is to try to make the modeling end of the hobby easier, more convenient, and less expensive. There's several items, and I think this is the biggest of all of them. I'll pass this around, or you actually can come up and look at it. Problem with any laser cut part is that you have to pay somebody to set up the laser machine. So in effect, if you make one part, or 10, or 1,000, the price can vary tremendously. Well, I've done this for the ribs that are in that little airplane, which Rudy has a set. It's also available for the big Cardinal. The ribs are so similar to about 90% of the other planes in the world that if you were to make, I just can't think of one right offhand, but a Paul Walker plane, for instance, an SV-11, they aren't that much different that I would think there's some big significant change. Now, Rudy is a good example. He built that with laser ribs. Mike Kajeski has built a wing. People that relatively had no trouble at all. Mike, I think, is on his third wing, at least if he's building them. But the advantage of laser cut ribs is, unless you're an extremely, extremely accurate person, to do this and to get the angles right and that the spars all snap in is extremely difficult. Now, I have built, and Mike Kajeski has, in under 4 hours, built a whole wing on one rod. I don't know anybody that hasn't been able to do that. I have never sold a set of these ribs to anybody that has said, oh, gee, I couldn't figure out how to do it. There's probably about 200 sets have already been sold, so I would think by now somebody would have screwed one up. They haven't done it yet. If they have, they've kind of kept it a secret. But anyway, if anybody is interested in, John Brodak is going to make a kit out of that airplane. John Brodak works a little bit different. He laser cuts the dies, so I would assume, being he's using these parts to work off, they're going to be relatively accurate. But again, that's the beauty of laser cutting. And the downside is that if Rudy wanted a special wing and if Tony wants a special one, that initial setup cost can be staggering. And the reason these ribs are excellent, in my view, is number one, when Steve Busso drew the plans, it took him 1.5 years to draw the plans. He didn't just run home and get a shoe and make up some airfoils and stuff.
He did these from a set of ribs that were already cut, so they're relatively accurate. No matter how you laser cut, it'll never be more accurate than the plans. Now, assuming that you have an accurate set of ribs for a wing, there aren't many other parts on the plane that you can't cut out. I mean, if you cut the tail a little bit crooked or the rudder or that kind of stuff you can sand out, but if you start with crooked ribs, the wing always winds up like a washboard. Now, another thing I want to emphasize, and I'll give these to Wayne, you can pass them around, is never, never, never think there's one way to build a wing. And it just so happens that I've spent the better part of the winter helping Ken Thompson set up his foam wing shop with Scott Smith's help and my help and George's help and probably 20 other people that have come over, Darrell and Kyle, to help us get started. Keep in mind, a foam wing has won the last 2 nationals. When Jim Damerell won the Nats, he did it with a foam wing. When Jimmy Casale won 6 or 8, I don't know how many Nats, all foam wings. That's a good way to build a wing. Bob Barron's wing. That built-up laser cut wing is a good way to build a wing. Bob Hunt's foam wing with the lost foam is a good way. There isn't one special trick Knowles way, and it's like a modified Bob Hunt way. If you say to yourself, there's a lot of good ways to do this, and how is it going to suit me? For a person with a really limited amount of time, laser cut ribs or foam is great. If you have more time and you need to improvise things, and you can make this as, I'm making an I-beam elliptical wing. I don't think anybody in the hobby's ever done it yet, and I realize why. It's March and I haven't got it done yet. All the people died of old age by the time they got to it. And the reality is, Joe Adamusco had his way with the double rods to make elliptical wings. I'm trying to make one with a molded carbon I-beam spark. These things get into the labor-intensive twilight zone of reality. Banjock's wing, the Mustang wing with the cuff in front of it. The average person is not going to have that much physical time or energy or a desire to do that. But look around at all the other ways to do things. There's certainly a lot of thanks to the people that put up the time and energy to do this. Ken, for instance, I know for a fact, has put a lot of 4 o'clock in the morning nights into getting his shop running. And there's no heat in the shop. We've basically spent every hour at ambient temperature. But I know that somewhere down the road, I know Scotty when he started it, and I know everybody when they start a business. I've started my own business already. It's difficult in the beginning. So have a little patience and understanding. But hopefully by the end of the year, you'll have several good choices of whatever kind of wing you want to build. And don't be swayed by anybody. Don't be swayed by it has to be laser cut, it has to be a foam wing. There's a lot of good choices, and you're never going to really know until you build one. And I know Carlos has built foam and not foam and built up, and I'm just looking at the people in the audience that I know have built all different kind of things. Noel has built all kind of, and the reality is when you go to the Nats and the plane is flying, as long as the wing is straight and it's as light as you can make it without breaking, it's probably going to be okay. So if you keep that in mind, the laser cutting is only one way of making it a little easier than having to sit down with a pen and a paper and cardboard and trace out the ribs. But certainly never say that that's the only way to do it. If I don't do it that way, oh my God, it's not going to work out. Rich has a set of laser ribs, I know. Rich has made foam wings. Look around you. All of these ways are doable, and you need to just select one that works right for you. How many planes did you build this year? Nancy and Tony, I know, making, every time I hear about this. Jim Borelli too, it's a foam wing, it's a built-up wing. But that's the whole fun of doing this. And the only challenge for me is with this I-beam wing, it isn't like if I could come here and show you an I-beam wing and say mine is an ounce lighter or a quarter-ounce lighter, it's that it's a challenge to do it. And at some point in time, you build a foam wing, you build a built-up wing, and you need a challenge. You need something to keep you going. Well, believe me, this is a challenge. It really is very difficult, and with Joe Adamusco's help and Bob Martin, we have spent probably 200 hours, and we don't have a wing put together yet. But that's what makes it fun. Banjock, how far along is your plane?
It's getting there.
Okay, okay, cool.
Thanks, Wes.
That's it.
Wait, before you go, two projects up here, you guys talk about these briefly. Okay?
Yeah, Rudy, you wanna?
Rudy.
Tell them how you did this, that's kind of cool.
Saw the video and he broke out some wood.
Basically, that's what I did. This is built from the video, not from the plans.
The only thing I did is I called Wendy to get the moments for the tail group and all. But basically, this is the laser cut ribs, and if you want to build the wing fast and straight and light, this is it. This airplane is 42 ounces, and I'm not a master builder or anything. I'm surprised it's that light. But like I said, I couldn't go wrong. Once I seen his going together on the video, I just copied from the video. I looked at what he had, and I did the same thing. They tried to. That's about it.
All through this one. And what's significant about this plane is this is the prototype plane. This is the one that we made, and he watched the videos of it. The thing that I was hoping was going to happen is that this would not be a cheater plane. Cheater plane being when an expert level builder builds a simple plane relatively. What typically happens, it comes out 10 ounces lighter than everybody else in the world builds it. So here you show up with your plane that you've built, or that, and here comes Mr. Expert, and his is 10 ounces lighter. Well, that's not the same plane now. So I thought, well, right from the get-go, I want this to be representative of what we have. Rudy's is about as representative as you get. His is 42, mine is 42. Basically built with laser cut ribs. I'm assuming an average person with an average amount of ambition could knock that wing out in one day. The tail and the body might be another day, and reasonably within a week of working on it, you should have a plane ready to put some finish on. Mine has 1/8" controls. I don't know, what is yours? Does yours have 1/8" ones? You can argue that point to the moon, whether it has 1/8", it needs it, it doesn't need it. If it doesn't need it, it didn't hurt anything anyway. But anyway, it's kind of a simple plane. There's no part of the plane that an average person, I think, maybe other than the wheel pants, should be intimidated by. It's got a relatively inexpensive engine, and it's set up in such a way that we can shim it. Well, you got the same thing as yours, a John Brodak's thing that you can shim the tank up and down. I'm hoping this is going to be a lot of fun to have a contest, and it'll be like a demo plane. And actually, the real reason I built this is I want to get the contest, and at the end of the contest, get Dan Banjock to fly my plane. And I don't want him touching my Spitfire. No, but I'm saying, this is the kind of thing now Mike Chioda at the end of one of Vic's contests flew a Spitfire. What happens if you do that too often, you can be embarrassed. You can fly into a tree or something. But if you have a plane like this, and now you want to have like on a Saturday before the Mass Cup, as a good example, we've done it with Woody Mitchell's plane. Say, let's have a contest. Anybody wants to enter the contest, $10, we all fly Wendy's plane. There you go, you don't get a practice flight, you don't just get to set the needle valve. Well, you know what it reminds you of is that you're doing this to have fun, really. And then the bottom line is, a couple of times of doing that, and you kind of get focused in on what you started doing this with to begin with. But anyway, we have had fun building this. This has been a fun project. Ken Thompson's been a big help. He wasn't much help buffing it out. He sat and watched me buff the whole thing out. He was real good at watching. So you know what? When his notebook needs to be buffed, don't look for my hands on the video. Anyway, that's simple, and like I said, I hope that the John Brodak will have kits available at some undetermined time, and it'll be kind of a fun plane to, at the end of the contest, it'll even be a contest plane. I mean, you can enter this in big time stuff, I guess. You just can't enter it in nostalgia, so.
Wendy,
Yes?
is the, in the kit, are those way cool fairings incorporated in the kit, or is that?
Where are the bearings? The wheel pants, you mean?
No, the fairings coming off the leading edges, like
Well, I'm
that.
going to talk about that on the demo. That's one of the little things I was going to talk about. No sense getting into that now. The wheel pants, we're going to try I'm sorry, Al. Ken and I started carving wheel pants, and because of time constraints, I don't know if anybody in the room does know, my business partner for the last 11 years passed away. It basically means that within a year I'll have a totally different type of business, or no business at all, I don't know yet. But I've tried to reorganize things in a way that would have the minimum impact on the world of stunt. I already have the punch press in Ken's shop. I'm going to have a milling machine very soon. I'm going to have a lathe very soon. And I'm going to be, hopefully in the next year, trying to reorganize so that some of these products and services don't get left by the wayside. I know it's a problem, and I know it's an ongoing problem in this hobby. In the 80s, nobody made horns. Everybody was cutting belt cranks out of sheets of Delrin. I mean, nobody made mufflers, nobody made wing jigs, nobody made... If you made a plane, you basically built it from scratch. And little by little, the hobby's gone in the direction of a lot of good people putting their heart and soul out, just like Ken and just like Randy with the mufflers, how many times we talked about it. It's really a labor of love, but without these products and services, you're going to have some real negative impact on it. You're not going to have 1,800 people flying stunt if they all have to make their own muffler. And the people that have taken the time and energy to do it. In fact, I'm going to say something that probably, this will be the end of it. Somebody called me up, and I'm sure a lot of people here remember Bill Rich. Bill Rich lives in Florida. And in the middle of a conversation talking about other things, he said something that just blew me off of my chair. He said, you know something, Wendy? Thanks a lot for taking the time to make whatever he was buying, handles or felt cranks or whatever. And I never thought of it that way. But I thought, well, how many times have I bought things from other people? How many things have I gotten from other people that I just forgot to say thank you? I mean, I bought wings from Scott, wings from Big Jim, motors, tanks, and maybe sometimes just a little thank you goes a long way, and you'd be surprised. It really blew me away. So, case closed. Anybody wants to pick the plane up? Be my guest.
Okay. Wendy,
Yes, oh, sorry, no.
what size is that? How many square inches?
620.
620.
And it's 42 ounces no matter who builds it.
And
That's the best.
Wendy has,
Even if I build it.
Wendy's got some sort of plans out there, right?
And there's plans, by the way, the plans are free for anybody who's going to build a
And he'll
plane.
say they use the wings, the rib stack, so this is
Yeah.
something if you want to scratch build with the ribs.
The ribs are free if you're really going to build, I mean, the plans are free if you're really going to build a plane. But please don't take a set if you're not going to build
And
it.
if you really talk nice to them, the ribs are free too.
And dinner at Richard's tonight.
Let me get Mike Palco and Danny Van Jock and, who else is going to be on this panel?
Somebody.
Bill, come on up here. And we're going to talk about the Nationals at the AMA Flying Center fire. Who? Why don't you sit down? We're going to talk and pose questions. One of the things that from here, from where we're ensconced this afternoon, 12 hours to the AMA National Flying Site, and it's a terrific facility. I think you'll see and agree. And we're going to have a short guy come up and talk.
You're going to stay seated, huh?
So, they're going to relate to you their experiences. This year, for the first time, all of the classes that we're used to flying in stunt are going to be flown at the Nationals. Tom Morris and I are involved in a program to get intermediate flown as an unofficial class. It will be flown on the Monday, which is the 13th of July, I believe. Couple of things, 12 hours away, you want to go fly intermediate, see the flying site and stuff like that, you can drive over there for the weekend, spend Monday there and either jam overnight or you get a minimum of work time lost. But I think after listening to these guys, you'll see you probably want to stick around. Mike, why don't you start out and tell us what you thought of the whole deal?
I liked it. Good experience. You meet a lot of new people. You learn a lot. The museum was a lot of fun. You get to see all the different types of control line flying, the speed, the stunt, the combat, the RC, the free flight. Overall, I had a great time. A lot.
Daniel?
I'll back up what Mike says. Thank goodness we made it there. Almost went the wrong way and ended up in Canada, but my navigator kind of saved us. But yeah, real good time. Lots of good people out there. John Brodak was out there, and we put a lot of fun in it out there. A lot of people put a lot of fun in it. Flew to Vyslav. Really had a blast with that. And yeah, finally got to see Dynajets run. And that's pretty cool. And RC pylon racing, those people aren't right. That's a problem there. That's just too fast and too loud.
Little airport, they went for a biplane ride.
Yeah, we took right over from the AMA flying sites, a little airport, Stearman rides, Cub rides, full aerobatic. You can get to fly the bird. Very good, nice money spent right there. It was a fun day there. This year, I think we're going to try and get down to Dayton Museum, because that's only a couple hours away. We got a little messed up when I didn't make it last time, but that'll probably be the goal this year to make that one. All in all, fantastic time.
Okay. And did you, now you of course performed fairly well and again you made the cut to the top 20 and was that where you finished up?
Rookie of the year.
Yeah, right in 20th.
Now Danny's a very good flyer, but did you feel like you were way out of class here?
No.
And it wasn't that, you know.
Oh, I figured I was going to be down there and going to have to work up to it, but I didn't feel like I was underjudged or overjudged or anything.
Right.
You know, so I was happy with it. I was real happy.
Exactly. Was the same experience with you, Mark?
Yeah.
Dan, you were open or advanced?
Open. Yeah. And except for, what was it, things finally started working at the Nets, but before the Nets, there were so many things that went wrong with that stiletto. I couldn't count them. Muffler blew up, cowling fell off, I mean, just continuously.
You should have seen Don and I at the Nets. I went through like 2 motor changes. It was more like a job.
That's half the fun.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, definitely allow some time there, and just a little time before to prepare. Because it seems like, I don't know what it is, that's when everything turns to heck.
Bill? Before the officials.
Oh, my fault on the match was just going there and trying to survive it, being an intermediate flyer flying in advance. My goal was not to crash my airplane, try not to come in last, which I did almost crash. But we had a good time. Probably the highlight of the match was seeing Dan win the Rookie of the Year at the banquet, watching him turn red and pass out. But it's a good experience. Met a lot of people there, had a good time.
No.
I was going to say, these two guys here brought a lot of fun to the Nats, between flying the Vyslav and playing with yo-yos. And one afternoon it was so windy that nobody was flying. I came back to the site and these guys are out there with a stunt kite, flying a stunt kite. Yeah, it's a fun experience. It's also, if you're really serious about this hobby, it's a big learning experience, I think. I've been 2 years to Muncie, and both times I learned a lot of stuff. There's a lot of very experienced people there. Everybody will answer your questions and help you. Something Wendy talks about a lot of time, stealing somebody's trade with your eyes, you know? You can learn a lot by watching. And this year I found myself looking at things that I didn't even think about last year. Like this year, I was looking to see where do people take off flying in the wind? How do they set up for a landing in the wind? You know, little things like that. You know, watching people's footwork. There's a lot of footwork to flying a good pattern. There's a flyer from Brazil,
Benny Rodriguez. Benny and the Jets.
Benny looks like he's dancing when he flies.
He is.
He's amazing to watch. But he's a very good flyer. He was top 20 flyer. Flies at the Worlds. Yeah, question?
My question is for any one of you up there. Do you feel any more pressure, you know, when you're called up to the line to fly than you would at any other contest?
But I don't think it's overbearing. I don't think that...
That's what you think.
Wendy,
Wait till you fly there, Peabody.
Wendy does, because Wendy is one of the top flyers in the country. Certainly one of the top 5 in the country. And he has to feel pressure. You know, he's got 4 or 5 other guys that he's trying to beat. Danny didn't go there with the idea he was going to beat Wendy. I don't think Mike went there with the idea that he was going to beat that other dumb kid. What was that kid's name? You know, no.
Dan Quayle.
Bill's mission was not to crash. And so, yeah, there's some more pressure on ET. These are important guys. But I think what you all learned was that everybody there is anxious to help, with the possible exception of Wendy, who's on video and stuff like that. Don't you think that they're wanting, anybody there you could ask a question and they try to answer it, you know?
Yeah, I think there's more pressure, but it's just like any other contest. You really want to fly the best that you can, you know? If you go out there and flying, you say, that's how I'm flying right now, that's my best pattern, I couldn't really expect to do better than that, you go home happy, you know? And you get a measure to see where you stack up too, you know?
Where did you and Mike stay, Danny?
Motel Hell. The Hilltop Motel. It's around the corner from the Ramada. We stayed at the Ramada, but we slept there. But what, $180 a piece, right? To split the room? It was, it's dirt cheap. And the place, there's like, I mean, it's run down, but it's clean.
Yeah, well, not bad.
Whereas the Ramada was more money and the pool water was
green.
That was weird. You stayed at Ramada, right, no?
Yeah, I stayed at Ramada. Ramada's not the greatest hotel on the planet. It has its problems. However, it's not really very expensive either. I think it's $35 a night for a room. Yeah.
The problem is you can't get one.
Noel, one of the things you might want to mention about when you pick a motel, about half of what happens at a National, in my experience anyway, happens in a motel room. Especially if you go with John Batavio. I'll leave it at that. But what I'm saying is, if you pick a motel, it's $5 cheaper and across town, and all of the guys that you're flying with are staying in the other motel, really, they're hanging around at the pool and they're hanging around. In our room in the last year that we went, it was an unending party. Just people coming in and out and telling stories and lying and cheating and stealing and breaking motor. Chris McMillan blew up his motor and he scammed my good motor. And I mean, that's the fun. The fun of a National is not really the flying part of it. To me, is yes, it's nice and that'll be part of it. But the parties in the room, the sharing, the helping, the schmoozing and carousing and watching John Batavio late at night, that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, there's another advantage to the Ramada. I'm not trying to tout the Ramada, really. Another advantage is the location, because it is really convenient.
It's close, yeah.
And most of the nice motels in Muncie are on the other side of town, and it's a half-hour drive to get there. So that's another thing Ramada's got going for it.
How'd you get a room at the Ramada?
I think if you get it for a week, it's like $35 a night.
No, I mean, I called there like 3 months in advance. They put me on a waiting list. Everything was booked.
Did you tell them you were with AMA, with Pampa?
He
Yeah.
did identify himself.
And in fact, the day after the Nats closed, I tried to book for this year, and the place was booked solid. So.
Now, there is a campground too that's not too far if you're into that nice state campground there with hot showers and clean and well guarded and everything else. And like Danny and Mike said, they don't, at the Ramada, they're fairly much unaware anyway. You can go over there and use all the stuff that's at the Ramada. Break all the windy stuff and then go back to your $6 a night campground.
It worked for Zambelli.
Yeah.
If you have a camper, actually, you can park. What I did, I went not this past summer, but the summer before, 96, and I have a motorhome. I parked right by the U-Control circle, and that was my home. And I stayed there for the whole. That's a good idea.
They don't even let you pitch a tent right
Yeah, you can do that. There's
no hookups. But I'm self-contained.
See, Richie, Marianne and I are taking a motorhome out there, but I'm a little concerned about getting to I don't want to park by the flying site because we want, the amenities of having the hookups and stuff. So how am I going to get from where we're camping to where we're flying with our gear?
Fire Hampshire. It's not that much of a problem.
Is it maybe walking distance?
No, it's not, but I think you can find somebody to plead it with.
It's a ride.
Get rides, yeah.
Okay.
That's, I hardly ever had my truck there because Zambelli was out touring the country. Noel and I are going to be there Saturday night this year on the 11th to go to Winchester, we've decided. Right?
What's that?
Winchester Speedway.
Oh,
yeah.
You don't remember deciding that, Noel? And you're paying. Didn't remember that either, huh?
Now, Danny mentioned the Air Force Museum is like an hour and a half push.
I don't know about that. I'm driving 760 miles on Saturday, and I'm going to the practice circles after I get there. I'm probably going to bed after I do a little practice.
Danny mentioned the Air Force Museum. There's also another thing up the road north is the Cord Auburn Duesenberg Museum. A wonderful place. It's in Auburn, Indiana, right north of this site. Okay?
I forgot to go back this year, a little more presentable. I started building this about a year and a half ago. Finished it up about a week ago. And after watching Wendy's videos, I wish I watched them before I built them. I learned a lot since then. Made a few mistakes. Came out about 72 ounces, Super Tiger 60. It's got lacquer paint, SIG light coat on top of it. The next one I'm building is an SP11, that'll have all SIG paint on it. Trying to keep it light as possible. Like I say, 72 ounces, I'll shoot for like 68. Keep it light, I tried to keep the paint thin. As you can tell, the white, you can see through it. Should put at least another couple coats on that. Haven't flown it yet.
Day's not over.
That's about it.
Okay.
If you have any question in the middle of this, ask them, because this gets progressively more complex. At some point, everybody in the room will have lost interest. In the beginning, it starts out with a thought that I had. A friend of mine, Ed Gallagher, had sent me some fiberglass parts, and he said, why don't you guys make fiberglass parts for your airplanes? Now, Brian Ether had made them for years. They aren't a new phenomenon, but it's relatively difficult to adapt this technology to where we can use it. So I started out, and it has been a wonderful adventure. I'm sure anybody that's done this knows. You run down to your local store, and you buy some fiberglass cloth. This is called E-glass. And typically you buy some, I hope I have a can of it here, some polyester resin, which is very inexpensive, and a little thing of hardener, which is MEK, and you run out and make a fiberglass part. Now when you're all done with that part, it's relatively easy to make a mold and make a part. The only problem with all polyester parts, they're full of bubbles and pinholes and cracks and imperfections. So for all purposes, unless they're your parts, they're unsaleable, because you're not going to hand this to a guy and it's got a big golf ball missing in the middle of it or something. So what happens is you learn very quickly that there's a limit. Bondo is polyester. Anything that you use drops of hardener to a giant quantity generally fits into the polyester resin field. This material is extremely inexpensive. A gallon is about $20. The hardener is pennies. You can make Corvette fenders and cowlings for GB Sportsters and everything. Most RC people that start out, or if you're going to experiment, you use polyester resin to get your hands wet and get an idea of how you want to do things. You'll also use a process called hard molding. Hard molding means if this was the part that you wanted to make, you take the material that you're actually going to make the part out of and make the mold. And you'll lay that material up over the original part that's called a plug, and you then in effect have a female replica of that part, which then you have to wax and put a material called PVA on so that the fiberglass part doesn't stick. Now what happens at some point in time, you realize there are severe limitations to polyester resin. Polyester resin, relative to epoxy, is roughly half of the strength. So we're trying to make parts typically for our models that are ultra light. So right away, you realize these parts are kind of heavy relative to what they could be if they were made out of different material. Now, the second best material to make the parts out of is Kevlar. Kevlar is a whole different thing. It's difficult to cut, it doesn't like to bend, it doesn't like to absorb resin, and you pretty much can't use polyester resin with Kevlar and get good results. So what happens is you move up and you realize you have to use some kind of an epoxy system. Now I bought probably $1,000 worth of different epoxies, and the best one I found for all purposes is West Systems resin. This is basically what boats are made out of. The only part that's inappropriate to make out of this resin is a propeller. This is not a strong enough resin to make a propeller. When you make a propeller, you really want to use EPON 815 and a cure agent called TETA that's tremendously toxic. You really shouldn't even be able to buy it without some kind of licensing. And you can kill yourself using it. So my wife, I explained these things to her, agreed that we should buy a lot of West Systems resin and do all of the other material out in the garage, which we've done. But basically, when you get to West Systems resin or any epoxy resin, the mix ratio gets critical. Any epoxy has a preferred, the mix ratios are always on the back of the can. As opposed to polyester resin. Polyester resin, you just keep putting harder in, it cures quicker and quicker and quicker. Epoxy doesn't do that. You lose mechanical strength, you lose the qualities that come from epoxy. So, having gone through this whole scenario, we're right back at using for all of the Brodak cowlings, all of the Cardinal cowlings, wheel pants, spinners, exhaust manifolds, everything is made out of West Systems resin. A good side, it's available locally, you don't need a mask to use it, you get some on your hands, your skin doesn't explode. It's totally smell-free, there's no smell, my wife doesn't even know when I'm using it in the house. These are the good things that come from this. Now, I also, on my own, have tried making these parts out of carbon fiber, but I've found that carbon fiber in lightweight cloth is very expensive. And for our purposes, the parts came out no better than when I used E-glass. E-glass bent around corners, and I could get away with using one layer or two layers. If you look at a Nobler cowling real quickly, there's a lot of complex curves up around the spinner. E-glass was the material. When I made the same thing out of carbon, I needed so many more layers of carbon to fill in all the edges, it didn't pay. So basically, what happens is no matter when you want to do this, it's real nice if you have a friend that's already gone through this, and you only have to buy the material that you're going to use. In this case, if Danny, say, on his Mustang wanted to make a Mustang cowling, he would carve a plug. He would then have two choices. He could make a hard mold, and probably for $10 you could make a hard mold and then make as many of these. I know Mike's basically making the same plane, right? You could make both cowlings in one afternoon. It would be very nice. You could also, if you wanted to, send me the plug, put a nice epoxy finish on it, sand it smooth, send it to me, but I would then ask you if you were going to make more than two of these parts. One or two is about all I like to make out of a hard mold because it's really difficult. And then we would do some rubber molding. This is a rubber mold. Now the advantage of a rubber mold, and this is the one for my I-beam Spitfire, I'll pass this around, is you never have a part stick, and you never have trouble getting a part out, because you can't get the part out, you just bend it. When you have a Nobler cowling, if you make a hard mold, you'll 3/4 of the time not be able to get the part out conveniently. So this is now, the system that I use is rubber molding, E-glass, and West Systems resin. This is relatively inexpensive. We could do, just an example, Danny's cowling. In one afternoon, we could make the mold, so it would probably be an hour or two. And at that point in time, we could make 100 of them. We could make one a day infinitely. And the cost of this rubber, when you buy small quantities, it's very expensive. It's like $60 for that amount. But when you buy a tub like this, a tub is only $100. So now you can make 10 of them, and the molding rubber becomes very inexpensive. Again, this is stuff that's not toxic to use, but you really don't want it. Some of it does have an odor. You don't want to use it right before dinner. But once you have a rubber mold for a part, now somebody asked me about that little fairing that goes in front of the wing. Yeah, we could make that in a heartbeat, no problem at all. If Noel had a little exhaust manifold, something that goes on a semi-scale plane, wheel hubs, wheel pants, any number of little parts that are tremendously labor-intensive to carve, and then you want to make them again, or your friend is making the same plane, or, for instance, Jimmy and Mike Rogers basically made identical planes, and there's no mold for a pattern master cowling, but if there was, we could just make cowling, and nobody'd ever have to carve another cowling. Bill has a unique kind of a cardinal cowling. If he was going to make that same plane, and John Saunders was, once you have the plug carved, send it to me and I'll make a mold. And then you never have to do it again. You're done, you're finished forever. And you can go on with life. Couple of advantages of making fiberglass cowling that aren't really, I'm going to leave this on a table, anybody later can come up and fondle it and whatever. A couple of advantages, a cowling is always the first thing to get wrecked in a crash, it's the first thing to get oil soaked, the first thing to get scratched. When you have your friends pick up a model by the nose and they have big knuckles and rings and jewelry, the first thing that gets dents in it. Being able to make another one in a matter of 15 minutes really changes your whole perspective on it. Now, I've carved an oval cowling, and I've made fiberglass ones. The fiberglass ones are lighter. They also have another advantage. You can take and throw them across the room. They can be repaired. Also, when it gets oil soaked, can't be repaired. They also have the advantage of entry-level people, like this young guy here. Eventually, they want to have a sexy-looking plane, and the first thing you want to have is a cowling. Well, it's the hardest part of a plane usually to make, is to get everything right. But if you can have this already made and you just drill a hole for the glow plug and the needle valve, it makes the enjoyment of having a nice model or wheel pants that you can enjoy it early on in your modeling rather than having to build 30 twisters before you try to carve a cowling. So I see a lot of that as advantages that average the people at Flushing want to build Nobles. You almost never see a Noble without a cowling that's got a rubber band hold. Remember the old rubber band and tape? Never again. Anyway, you can then, the next level for us is there's all kind of sophisticated material that costs hundreds and thousands of dollars. There's end-grain balsa sheets. Depending on how much time and money, I just brought these samples, so if anybody wanted to look at them, it's really not appropriate to the average modeler, even though it's interesting. But the fiberglass cowling, I think, is here to stay. I know how many John Brodak's bought, I know how many are in hobby shops, I know how many are out of the box. Bill Barth even has them in stock, so have a ball. Yes, Paul?
Wendy, a good possibility for fiberglass parts would be the wing tips on, say, on that kit.
Yes.
Is that easy to have the wing tip? I think it's the second part get dinged on your on our process. It's easy to get the wing tip made, fiberglass made, and glue integrated onto the wing structure.
I think it would be, if anybody had a plane, again, I'm just thinking of Danny's Mustang, and he had a wingtip that he was going to make, Mike was going to make the plane, Danny's going to, and you'd only have to carve one wingtip, and you're done. You wouldn't even need the second one, because it's a mirror image, you can flip it over.
On the case of a kid, having the wingtips made of fiberglass would increase decrease the building time.
It's probably the only part on that plane that would take more than a half hour to carve, is to make, and most people, I would assume, are going to want to make their own fancy wingtips, or you know how people customize an airplane.
And how easy is to integrate the tip onto the wing structure as far as gluing, because the cowling is screwed in, right?
An excellent, well, there's no reason you can't make removable wingtips either. An excellent point, whenever you have a fiberglass part, you make the fiberglass part first. You don't build the model and then make the fiberglass part. You make the mold, you make the part first, of fiberglass, and then put it onto the fuselage and blend the soft balsa wood into the fiberglass. That's a key thing. So in the case of a wingtip, now Midgley has even gone one step further, and I know John Brodak's going to see this video tomorrow afternoon, so I'm going to say it right on video. If anybody wants a part vacuum molded, all those canopies that are out there and spinners are vacuum molded. He has molds for about 50 or 60 different things. A cardinal wingtip, you would only need to ever carve one wingtip and then undersize it, and that's a relatively easy thing to do. Now, when you build a plane, the thing to make the wingtips out of is the material the canopies are made out of, 40,000 sputerate, because that takes paint perfectly. There's no grain, like on a fiberglass part, there's typically little dings, and that would be a very practical way to make wingtips. Yes, and the only thing is, you need to make the original part once and undersize it, and from that point on, you're like the Spitfires. There's been about 6 or 8 molded top blocks for Spitfires that have gone on Noblers now. They fit perfectly. Sabatino has one. Where's Sabatino? Is he still in the room? When we did Robert's plane, when we were doing Monday nights at Wendy's, we decided we'll take a Spitfire top block, the molded balsa shell, let's see if it fits on a Nobler. Whack, whack, it fits perfect. There aren't that many variations. You think like an SV-11, a Paul Walker plane, or this plane, or that. These are all different. These planes are all within such a tolerance that you almost can take one part off and put it on the other one. They aren't that much different. And when you can use, like in Robert's case, to do that top block, I mean, for an average person learning the hobby, their first built-up plane, it's an intimidating thing to look at this big chunk of wood. when you can look at making the shell, now, in the case of people who are real local, you're always welcome to come to my house with your own wood and use the mold in my cellar and go away for free. If you're looking to save money, I'll mail you the mold for the cost of the postage. Or you can come by, or if you really have money to spend, I'll make it and charge you for it. I charge $30 for a piece. There's a reason. I typically make 3 at a time, and then I take the best one out. I don't make one. Sometimes they split at the back, the wood isn't just right. So if you're going to make a mold, and you're going to come to my house to make it, bring 3 pieces of wood. You need A-grain wood. You need a little jar, maybe a coffee cup full of ammonia, and an ace bandage, which I have, and a mold. And you can, Rich has already done it. You borrowed the mold, right? I mean, it's pretty simple to make a molded shell. John DeTavio made 3 or 4 top blocks for Cardinals in one afternoon. We just sat and made one, hit it with a hairdryer, took it out, put another one in. You really could make 3 in an afternoon, but it's best to make 1, let it sit overnight, and put it by a heating vent. But again, all these things, the thrust of all of this is basically to make lower skill level people able to have nicer and nicer equipment, because I think the attraction in the hobby is, the thing that hooks you into this hobby is the looks and appearance of the airplane. And if the planes look like 2x4s or like, I don't know, it wouldn't have the hook that it does. I think that's the major thing of the hobby, is how nice the planes look. And the earlier and earlier into it, you can have a plane with wheel pants and a Bill Mazzoni paint job and stripes, and that hooks you in for good. And now you're pretty much hooked. But when you struggle with monocoat and you struggle trying to make tape lines and stuff, and you can't carve a cowling, you can't make a wheel pant, or the wheels don't turn in the wheel pants, very frustrating. It's extremely frustrating. So I've tried to do what I thought would be the most obvious thing, is the nobler, the cowling. And that has been successful beyond my wildest dreams, to the point where I now have 3 molds going every day. 3 molds for Nobler cowlings. Now, I never envisioned that in my wildest dream. I've already got 5 other planes, I think 6 now, that I have, because Midgley has a custom Aries cowling. I can picture that very soon there's going to be 12, 15 molds, and there's going to be 60, and there's going to be... And if people all put their, just like when you want a foam wing from Ken Thompson, you pay the $20 to make the templates. Now along comes somebody else wants that same wing. They don't have to pay the template charge. But if every person had to pay the template charge, it's self-defeating. Same thing with a canopy. Dave Midgley has, I'm guessing, 50 canopies. He's got Stuka canopies. Now, who would build a Stuka here and not be able to get the canopy? Oh, now what do you do? What are you going to put, a Banshee canopy on this thing? But if one person carved the plug, now Mike, let me just think back. Mike Costello made the ballerina plug, if I'm right or wrong. Made a beautiful plug. Well, anybody wants to make a ballerina, now you have it. See, that's the whole thing. If one person does it, it's done forever. It never has to go to the 2nd and 3rd or 4th time. I'm just glad that Glenn is back making models. When Lou and Glenn used to make models, a lot of parts were relatively interchangeable. Well, if one of them one time made 1 cowling mold, nobody ever have to carve a cowling. And I know Lou used to take the cowling off one plane, put it on the other one, and sand the body in. Yeah, that's smart technology, because that little part can just frustrate the hell out of you. Not only that, Carl used to make pretty good copies of their planes. A lot of these parts are interchangeable. And in a world where everybody, the father worked, the wife didn't, you came home at 5 o'clock and you had the whole night with nothing to do, modeling was appropriate. The kind of modeling that's appropriate to this day and age is you need parts prefab, you need help, you need to be able to get through this relatively quickly. And I think that's why RC models have beaten us to death in a lot of things, that you can have these things already pre-made. Having gone just to the RAM show and seen how many things you can just go and buy, it's staggering. Any model you want, you can have, any motor, anything, it's all available. And that's, if our hobby would go in the same direction, if you could buy these kits a lot more prefab, a lot more juniors like this could say, have that yellow plane. Well, gee whiz, it wouldn't be an ordeal to build it. But when some of these things become an ordeal, and I know like painting, with Tony with his painting, just as an example, if somebody helps you along in a paint routine, and you can very quickly, Jim Borelli's a good example, get your plane into the front row in a year or two, wow, it's fun, it's challenging. But if every plane you make melts like a candle, it isn't that much fun. It doesn't add anything to anybody's life. So, anyway, that's what I've been trying to do. A couple of, just to mention things that I've thought about. We now have the 1-year test. I don't like to recommend things until I use them and they're a year old, but we now have these fillets that I made tested a year ago. Robert's got them on his plane, Ken's got them on an Obler, they're on a yellow plane. This material is roughly a third the weight of epoxylite. Paint seems to stick to it relatively well, and it's so cheap it's ridiculous. These 2 cans are $13 instead of whatever the 2 little 1-ounce tubs that they give you, which are now $13, by the way. So anytime you can decrease the cost of the hobby, you're going to bring more people in, it's going to be more enjoyable. So I think this is good material. Anybody that, you can copy the address off the label, you pull up an 800 number and they give it to you with a credit card. There's no reason not to get used to using this. Only one tip, make sure you use a gram scale to mix 2 parts to 1. You can't just mix it randomly. It's sensitive to the mix.
What's the name of that stuff?
Aeropoxy Light. It's roughly 1/3 the weight of epoxylite.
Where do I find it?
Is that epoxy?
There's an 8, I'll give the number. You can come and read it off the can. I don't have my glasses.
Can't read it.
1-800 epoxylite. I don't know. Buy a computer. But anyway, this is the reason when we first did Robert's plane, I didn't want to run off to the club because I know some people have a tendency to like discover God on a monthly basis. I like to see stuff a year old that's been used, that's been beat up and chewed up, and then see that it works. And I feel now like this is the first time I'm going to say it, that this is a material people should consider using. There's a test of another material that's just to show you how this works. Here it is. Why can't I think of his name? The guy who fell asleep at Middlesex. Pat Travers gave Joanna Musco and I Acroglass gel. It's an epoxy. We made a test fillet. Again, you can come up and look at this. Only one problem. This is $50. It's extremely difficult to get just the right consistency, at least it works well, and it's strong. But again, I like the idea that that's $13. And the fact is, when I did a test with this and with the Aeropoxy, they were both, the balsa wood is going to break first. You're not, no matter how, if you made these fillets out of solid brass, the wood is going to break first. So that's kind of a little bit of a find. What's that?
How's it sand?
Absolutely like balsa wood. Absolutely. The trick is though, it's nothing like epoxylite.
And that's what you use for the fillets on the...
Yes, and that little nose section, that little thing, which I'm probably going to make a mold for in the near future, because I can picture a lot of people going to have trouble carving that. This is a little landing gear mold. I just thought I'd bring it down and you can pass it around for making up Spitfire landing gear. And if anybody's made these out of wood, you know inevitably they break and crack and chip, and as soon as oil gets in there, you can't glue them back, then they break again. And right before the Nats, the day before you leave for the Nats, they always break right off the plane. Well, I figured I beat the system. I made up 6 landing gear sets, so I'd have a nice new shiny pair of Concours to judge it, and it worked. Anyway, I got another thing. Anybody doesn't know, this is carbon tow. Noel knows what this is. It's what arrow shafts are made out of. The lighter people use it. You don't want to get a splinter of this in your finger, but if anybody here wants to bond their horns to the back of the, Frank asked me that question before. This is the material you use. Come up and snip them. A foot of it will last you for life. You basically can take a reasonable amount. A roll like this is $250, so please don't take like 1,000 feet. Another thing, these are just little things I think will help everybody. Up until a year ago, a friend of a friend of mine, Bud McKnight, sent me a bunch of these. And I thought, oh man, I had never seen these before. These are...
Memory boards.
Nancy, the memory boards. Every woman here knows my wife has a million of these right next to my shaving cream. I looked at them every day, never knew. If you've ever used one of these, you can't imagine in your wildest dream how many things you can do with an emery board that you can't do with sandpaper. Getting inside a Cowlings fillets. Absolutely can't work without them. Now, Robert Sabatino, because he's in this business, he donated to our Monday night cause a whole bag. Well, Robert, you see they're about a third gone already. Everybody that uses one, it never goes back in the bag. I was thinking maybe what we need to do is get Bill Barth in here to start stocking these. And they're washable. And they make an eraser of all things that when these go up, you can erase it and all the stuff and they're brand new. So I'm thinking, wait a minute. This is, now, If anybody legitimately has never sanded a piece of wood, find a piece of scrap wood, I'll leave one out here. Sand a piece of, it's unbelievable how good that looks.
With a yellow card.
Yeah, Alex.
Probably come in different grits, but...
They come in different grits, but and it doesn't matter. They're excellent, and they're good for every level of model. In fact, you can pass this one around.
Okay.
We can find those generally?
Beauty supply place. Robert would. Where? Are they wholesale beauty supply place? Wholesale, and it passes by a bag, and they're cheap as dirt.
Okay, thanks, Win.
Okay.
Wendy's gonna have this stuff in the file. We're gonna go from the high-tech and modern stuff to the obsolete. I've got Dick Woolsey here and Tom Hampshire are gonna tell us about classic airplanes for what I'd like.
Carbon black. We don't do that.
I think half the speakers here have mentioned Brodak. I don't, if you're not familiar with Brodak, shame on you. Terrific guy. He's trying to revitalize Control Line, and he's doing a damn good job all by himself. Catalogs are available by Windy Film Mazzoni. Has them there $3 a piece. And terrific products. They all fit and work and stuff like that.
There's also good information in there, not just
Right.
product.
Right, there's building information, flying information. Tom Hampshire, Dick Woolsey.
Subject of gray hair. You can't see Wendy behind the camera, but he's in the club.
I'm in, I'm joined up.
Wendy, I'm sure you remember you had, I don't know how many, a half dozen of these?
At least.
Okay. So Sterling Ruffy, the 4 kits that I brought in are the ones that you won't see every day. Everybody sees a green box, everybody knows what a Chief is, etc. These are the ones that are a little tougher to come by. This is not a world beater by any means, but it would make a dandy classic project for somebody to build, like a Jerseyan or a Hemstra PT-19. It's not one you see every day in the week. Brodak kitted the Nobler. We're going to be neck deep in Noblers this season. That's great. But there's also a very rich history back there. One philosophical note that Dick brought mostly old-time stuff, I brought mostly classic stuff. There are guys who collect, who are in Mecca, the Model Engine Collectors Association, who are what I call hoarders, or worse. I'm not going to repeat what I think of them as. But guys who collect stuff, whose approach to collecting is, "Foop, I got it, you can't see it." That's in my view, my own opinion, that's the wrong way to look at it. My idea of collecting this stuff is, it's half because I enjoy it, but the other half of it is my own satisfaction in having a guy come up to me at the field and saying, "Hey, do you have a Ruffy? Can I get a copy of the plans? Can you get a copy? Is the Pope Catholic?" You bet you can get a copy of the plans. Like Wendy, you want a set of free wing ribs. If you're going to build it, yeah, that's the way I look at it. If you're going to build it, if you're going to preserve this stuff and protect and defend the history of stunt, you betcha you can not only have it, I'll ship it to you. Tell me where and when. And that really is the heart of it to me, is that the history that's out there is very, very rich. We're not the first guys to come up with this stuff. And the more we share it, the more we find out how much stuff was in. I opened up a 1953 magazine last night, just a stack of magazines I got at Lebanon yesterday. Guess what? 1953 is the first day that I'm aware of for a glow plug with an idle bar. Holy cow! Pretty bright. I don't know who he was. There's no name for the inventor in the ad, but pretty bright guy. Idle bars in 1953. Yeah. Who'd have thunk it? I'm going to turn it over to Dick. This is another one. The kit is a real tough one to find. This is very rare. This is one of those where you walk into the swap meet, you see it, you go right straight for it and get your wallet out while you're walking. Don't ask, just peel the money off. I paid $40 for this, and it's in the archives now. It's safe. Anybody that wants to see it, call me. The only rule that I have is, for one like this, I don't like to let it out of my hand. But if you want to come to my house, you can trace it, I'll trace it, I'll copy the plans. The goal is to circulate this stuff so that people can build it again. I have had the pleasure on 2 occasions of watching Dave Hemstra, the designer, fly these things.
Now, Dave is, he might be 70 by now.
He's getting in there, yeah.
He's
Old enough.
getting up there. Trust me, this guy can drive a model airplane.
Plus, he's a cool guy.
He's a southern gentleman, right down the line.
Monk's Corner.
Yep, Monk's Corner, South Carolina. Small town.
Yeah, he's the only one who lives there. It's real small.
He hit me with the best small town joke in the world. I was teasing him one day. We went to dinner after flying one day, and I'm teasing the day. I said, "Small town." He said, "Yeah, it's a small town. Don't nobody use turn signals because everybody knows where everybody else is." That's Monk's Corner. For Dave, I'm poking fun, Dave, with the greatest of affection. It's a small town. He is one nifty guy. He designed this thing. It's not popular around here. I imagine there are plenty of guys in South Carolina and in the Carolinas generally who are aware of it, who know what it was when. This is one of those stealth nostalgia classic subjects that nobody's built lately around here or on the West Coast for that matter. That's still a world-class stunner. If you care to build it straight and light and give it a decent power plant, it's a fearsome weapon in anybody's hands. Dick, I'll turn it over to you.
What year, Tom?
Published in American Modeler for 1962 or so.
What about the Ruffy?
Ruffy is about 59. But again, with all of these airplanes, they got published and they got kitted. And then there was an original version, like the Aries. You can get the Ambroid kit and
Can you take the plans out?
What's that?
Yeah, I just want to ask a question. I'm not real familiar with these. A lot of the manufacturers years ago, when they made a kit, purposely made it that you couldn't build from the plans. They didn't show the ribs. I can understand why. But I'm saying some of them do. Like if I was to get a copy of that from you or from you, I could go home and build a plane.
You can build.
I would not have to destroy that kit to go build a plane. I could.
The other thing you can get, and I'll give the address to anybody who wants it, is there's a fellow in Minneapolis, Dick Gleason, who is a godsend. He has taken all of the magazines, American, Canadian, Australian. He has on hand everything that was published from 1945 through present day. And it's all available. It's the only place I know of where you can get Impala plans, which are really nasty because the original magazine plans were 5.5 feet long, 36 inches high. So nobody's sheet copier handles them. You have to have a roll copier to duplicate the thing. Gleason is the only place I know of where you can get Impala plans. But there's typically differences with these between the designer's original, the magazine article, which may have been simplified, may have had some interlocking pieces left out, and then the kit. Obviously, the kit designer's criteria is very different than the world champion's criteria. The kit wants to be simple and cheap to produce. So you can run into differentials. The Ruffy is that way. It was sterling, not quite the right grade. This is a Midwest kit, and it's a very, very competent kit. This thing is one of the few, this is kind of the exception that proves the rule. This is one of the few which gives you a perfectly accurate representation in the kit of what the original World Beater looked like. Dick, over to you.
Oh, okay.
No, you can't have it.
It is a nice kit, and it's a nice airplane. And if you look at Stunt News, you'll see Hemstrott once in a while placing an expert first with this. It flies fantastic. It's a beautiful airplane. What's interesting, you don't have to look for an old kit. Tom Dixon is producing these kits. I have one outside. They are available. I don't know who's making them now, but you don't have to look up an old kit. And most of the plans are available.
Yes.
However, I do know flying models, Roland Freestad, anything that was out of a magazine, he can produce full-size for.
I'd like to get those addresses to put in Stunt News. People don't know that. I didn't know it.
He's in Stunt News, I think.
Well, I had never heard of it.
Cardinal Engineering.
Cardinal, he's got to be a cool guy.
He's good then.
Keep your wallet in your pocket.
But the stuff is available. Plans are available. It's a fantastic airplane.
Yeah.
If you talk to Billy Woolwich, he'll tell you that maybe the only thing we've done recently is had better engines. The aerodynamics have been here a long time, and that's a fantastic airplane. I'm here, I'd like to just talk about old-time stunt for a minute. There's a lot more to old-time stunt than a ringmaster and a barnstorm. And, oh, yeah, your canopy. I mean, that's fantastic. Barnstorms. You don't have to have the original kit. Golden State Hobbies makes one. This is one of the original kits. Barnstormer. It's also very close to a Stuka. There is really no difference between them.
It's part of what I said before is true. You don't realize it. If you go measure up the top 10 planes in the world, with very few exceptions, there isn't an eighth of an inch here, a quarter, and if you miss that quarter of an inch, nothing changed.
And nobody's going to know.
Nobody's going to know. No.
I talked to Lou Andrews before he passed away, and he told me about Don Stills, and he said, you know, I sent him one of my first Barnstormer kits. He said, my God, 6 months later in the magazine.
Yeah, the Stuka. My kind of guy.
They are very close. And
Yeah,
you've got
it's true.
the canopy. There's no need, you can't.
Right.
While going through some of my old-time kits, I came across this. This is, I find, very interesting. This is a Brown stunt trainer. Yeah, Brown stunt trainer. It comes prefab. This is the way it showed up.
Ambroid?
Well, who knows? But that's not a bad size for a 15 size airplane. You got a youngster flying, that's your airplane. That isn't difficult. I'd like to see more of us fly some old-time stunt, that's all. Airplanes aren't difficult to build. This looks like a nice airplane. A lot of times, as I said, we see in old-time stunt ringmasters, we see All-Americans and Barnstormers.
Just spilled the coffee. I got so excited about your play. My card will go in. Oh, no. Get one of Ken's foam wings. My plane.
It wasn't the plan. Anyway, another excitement.
Can't take the pressure.
In old-time stunt, we don't see anything scaled. This is a monogram speed build on a rocker for a ONR 23. It does have a stunt airfoil on it. It's not going to be a Barnstormer, but it's something different.
We need the sweeper. The mopper.
Sweeper.
The mopper.
Speed build wing, just like the
Oh,
all models.
Use those on the table.
The sweeper.
Good use this, not having it all cut.
Help me, he's tickling me.
Yeah. They're built there.
I may have to give you a free set of ribs.
I do have plans.
Look at this.
If you look, take your time, John Misk has most of the plans, the circle grids, time stunt plans available. Unfortunately, it's just what plans are available, not what kits. So it leaves a lot to be desired in that area. But there's a lot that we haven't been doing in old-time stuff. Now, just for fun, I have some flyers I'd like to put out on the table. I'm from the New England Stunt Team, and in the spring we're having the stunt trials, June 6th and 7th, up in Springfield. And we have directions on how to get there. We'd like to see more New Jersey people up to visit us. One of the problems I have, at least at a contest, is with my wife. She doesn't like the restroom facilities in most contests. The little Johnny on the spot doesn't make it. I won't even go with him. But at least at Westover, a quarter mile down the road, we have an airport facility. It's a civilian airport. They have fantastic restrooms. You can just go here on down there a quarter mile, and it's lovely. They love to see you down there. So you don't have to use the porta potty. You can bring your wives, girlfriends, whatever. Tom, anything else?
Yeah, I have a couple to finish with.
Yeah.
And then we'll take questions.
My favorite, the shark.
Just one other one that among guys of my advanced vintage and higher experience level, shall we say, draws a lot of attention, but it's a tough kit to find, is a first version Vico Thunderbird. It's a Palmer design. The wing is a dead ringer for a smoothie. That's a little known fact, but if you take the plans out and lay them over nose to nose, it's a smoothie wing. Very, very difficult subject. I've built 2 smoothies. The first one went away. The second one is in flying condition. It works, but there's 2 things wrong. It's an elliptical wingtip, which is very difficult in respect of warp control, and it has the stock smoothie has a full 2-inch panel offset, and the flaps are located inboard. The outer third of the wing is unflapped. The fact that the inboard flap, guess what, turns out to be 2 inches longer than the outboard. So you make the outboard flap wider, and it still doesn't compensate. It makes the airplane want to hinge on the end of the lines like crazy. If you look at mine, it has a plastic fancher wart on the outboard flap trailing edge that's about 1/3, trying to control that hinging unsuccessfully. This airplane's going to have the same problem if you build it stock. It's a very difficult subject to trim. I will someday build one, but I certainly would suggest to anybody who wants to build a first-time, old-time / classic effort, you can't go wrong with Brodak's kit. That is just, my hat is off to John, that is just a terrific offering for the people who want to build an airplane that's OTS-2 legal, classic legal, and Pampa legal. For that reason, the typical guy that's in beginner, intermediate, advanced wants to build a full fuselage airplane. You really will have a hard time beating the Brodak Nobler, both on design and the fact you can buy the kit and build the thing and it's beautiful. No.
I just want to know what kit you're talking about. You didn't say Nobler originally.
Oh, Brodak's Nobler kit. Which seems to, Wendy announces that he's making cows for the thing, and he can't do it fast enough. He's got 3 molds going and 3 shifts.
So he sold a lot of those kits, believe me.
Yeah, iron help.
I wish he had to sell them all through me.
The other one I brought out is fairly rare. This particular kit is terrible. It's a 4-pounder, but this is a McFarland Shark. I brought it out because it illustrates to me what I meant when I mentioned how rich the history of stunt is. This is an airplane McFarland designed when he was in the Air Force, on the Air Force team, the Ruffy. And that's another part. In the dim past, the entire, quote, hobby, close quotes, of model aviation drew pretty tremendous support from the military. Because guess what? Ask Danny Banjo, you know how to fix a model airplane, you can fix a helicopter too. You can fix a jet. You can fix darn near anything. Boy, isn't this swell? If we ever get into a real scrap, we're probably going to find that model airplanes will get to be pushed again by the military because that's a training ground that's acceptable. What this thing has is, this is McFarland, I'm going to say 59 was when he built the first one. The kit is about 1960 or 61. For the folks who, this kit is not as pristine as most collectors would like, I don't worry about it, okay? But you looked before at Wendy's rib for the Brodak Cardinal, for his Brodak Cardinal. And I just want you to just eyeball that rib and tell me how far you think we really came since 1960.
Somebody have a set of ribs?
Yeah.
Who just, I'll bet they aren't a lot different. I never checked, but I bet they are.
We made the leading edge a little bit blunter by eye. We could lay them over, but we're probably going to find that this is very, very close. I don't want to unfold the plans because I'm in sympathy, Doug Benedetti, with the guys who can't see like I can't see, so I'm not going to show stuff on little lines up here. But if you look at this thing in terms of nose and tail moment, just look at the sketch on the kit box. This is about the same moments that we see today. The only difference, in my own view, is really powertrain. We made the powertrain a whole lot better. Other than that, this airplane is pretty much a modern-day stunner from 1960. Nobody bothered with it then. It wasn't popular. McFarland flew them and won with them, but they never got the same kind of play that we see today. That's the thing that really set me into collecting, is that the further I go with collecting, I buy this stuff, and I find every time I open a box or a plan from another old kit, here's some other feature that somebody just printed 2 weeks ago as some whiz-bang new technology. And we're going full circle here, fellas. We really need to go and look at our history, because there's a tremendous number of both basic fundamental aerodynamics and knacky little high-tech tricks about how to bolt stuff together and make it stick that's in our history that we're just guilty of not reading it. Yeah, Wendy.
I had to tell you, seeing this kit, when I saw this in 61 and 62 at the Nats, I went home and designed a sweeper. I said, if he can do it,
yeah.
He made it some percentage bigger, I just made it more big, and of course he won and I didn't, but nobody. What I'm saying is he latched onto an idea here that I think is very significant, is that bigger planes at that time were a very popular thing. And Harold Price even went and made the Crusader.
Yeah.
Several other people, I'm sure Billy Warwich has a big Aries, or a lot of the people went in that direction.
He has a Super Aries.
Yeah.
Built about 1966 or 67, which I'm told he dislikes flight-wise. I don't know why, but I've heard that he built this Super Aries and decided he didn't care for the way it flew. I don't know what he didn't like. Carl?
The Super Aries ended up to be USA 1.
Did it?
Yeah.
All right.
It's USA, the first USA 1, which he used over and over again with different engines in it, was evidently a flexible flyer.
All right.
All kinds of work he had to do on it. It was flexible as hell and performed very well. Wearage could never repeat the performance of USA 1.
Isn't that the one that had the wing that had like dihedral? I remember seeing that at the 81 team trials, yeah. The wing would bend in level flight, and then when you'd go inverted, it would bend, but it never broke.
All right.
Kind of cool. I have ones that look good, they break.
Take a look at one of Larry's combat ships when it's doing maneuvers. One of the they're
another significant thing here is another thing that I remember a lot of people saying is that when they started at this era, now maybe there's a counterpoint to this, they started making the motors bigger and bigger, 40s and 45s and whatnot.
Right.
And made the planes bigger. And then they realized it's better if you just leave the motor big and make the plane small. They went in the other direction for a while.
Yeah, this airplane in its original state was powered by a K&B Greenhead 45.
Unmuffled.
Which is a weirdo. I have two of them. One, the first version without the flywheel, the second with a rear counterbalancing flywheel. They were such a shaker that they put a rear disc on the engine, not to govern intake like a rear intake racing engine, but so they could hang more counterweights on it to hold the vibration down. Those things turn a 10.6 at 11,000 RPM wide open. I don't understand what the timing is. I've never timed one out with a degree wheel to get it accurate, but they don't make a lot more power than a Greenhead 35. You may be able to load them with a big prop and get more out of them. But the next one, this thing finished its competition career with Vico 45s, which worked. Vico engines, that's another story. Get yourself a Vico 35, a 1957 Series 100 Vico 35 sometime, and take it apart. It's got a very accurate crank bushing. It's got a bushed rod on the big end, and it's got, believe it or not, 1957 technology, a full floating wrist pin bushing. That is, the bushing is held laterally by the pin bosses, and it's free to rotate not only around the wrist pin, but inside the rod as well. Take one of these things apart. I think Mel Anderson designed it. I'm not sure about that. But you take one of those things apart, and every time you take off a new piece, you look at it, and for $15.95, every piece in the engine is jewelry. It's like Randy's Aero motors now. You take it apart, and my gosh, look at the finish on this thing. At any rate, these things finished with Vico 45s, which are a very, very competent 2.4 stunt motor today. They're still very, very competent equipment. You know what? I'm talking and these guys want to eat. I'm going to get shot if this keeps up.
You got anything?
Yeah, I do. I got two more things too. I just remember two more things. First of all, that 45 is available out here in the new kit, that Shark 45. Right at the moment, there are more U-Control stunt kits on the market than there ever were in the 60s and 70s. It's astounding. Next thing, I don't know if some of you know Larry Richards. Anybody know Larry Richards? He does a lot of custom kit cutting, but he's working with Carrier stuff. He did cut a lot of custom kits, and they were Vico kits. Junior Thunderbird, that Thunderbird, the old Thunderbird. He's very confident. He may do them one at a time, I'm not sure. Bubba Spivey from Lanier, who owns Vico Dumas, sent them a letter and said, stop doing this, because we're going to, produce the kits. They never did, so it's nice to have somebody at least custom cut a kit for you. They're beautiful, they're well worth it. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I'd like to see you up at the Mass Cup and the stunt trials in the spring. And I'll leave some directions out here to get there.
Real good. Thank you, guys.
From a local marine place, and then I've got a lot of stuff from Glue Products. They're real good about delivering on time and stuff. I don't get a good price because I only buy a yard at a time.
Yeah, Defender Products out of Waterford, Connecticut.
Write their address down for me. I'll definitely get a catalog.
This will kill you.
Okay, now in the concourse eating tournament, most sausage dripped on a lapel, Noel Drindax in the top 5. Let's see, who's this? Uh-oh. This looks like a cheater thing. There's no drooling in this, I think. Look at this, Steve DeJulia. Let's see, is he eating neatly? Rosemary, he's eating neatly. There's the plant thief of Philly over there, stealing cardinal plants. How disrespectful. Holy mackerel. If you don't think that's going to be the headline in my next column, you're out. Kyle Freeman, formerly of Rahway State Prison. The whole enchilada. And Mike, hey, let me tell you something. Whose Mustang's going to be better, yours or Danny's? Guaranteed his will be heavier. You know, when you go to weigh him, jury rigged the scale, so like put some lead in his tank box. What a stunt for him. Go ahead. I want to get a picture of Ken's wings before. I saw somebody trying to knock the Nobler off the table before.